Okay, so Elizabeth Warren just made Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, squirm and essentially not know what to do when she presses him on the issue of inflation and the fact that it's the corporations that are driving it. Please take a look at this video. It's absolutely amazing. Watch this.
But let me ask it the other way then, because we're still kind of doing Econ 101 here. If you're a corporation that has eaten up most of the competition and cornered the market, is it easier for you to raise prices on your customers and maximize your profits because you don't have to worry about losing your business? In other words, you've lost the discipline that the market imposes.
In principle, if you don't have competition and you're a monopolist, yes, you can raise your prices.
Okay, and over the past year, we know that prices have risen because of supply chain problems, unexpected shifts in the demand for goods, and even higher labor costs. But if corporations were simply passing along these costs in highly competitive markets, would the company's profit margins have changed much?
You know, so many things affect those that calculation. In principle, you could be right, but
well, it's very much not what we're seeing right now. Today, nearly 2 out of 3 of the biggest publicly traded corporations in the country are reporting fatter profit margins than they reported before the pandemic, which doesn't sound like they're just passing along costs. So let me ask you, does that increase in profit margins combined with greater market concentration in industry after industry suggest to you that some corporations may be passing along increased costs and at the same time charging more on top of that to fatten their profit margins?
That could be right. It could also just be, though, that demand is incredibly strong, and that you know, they're raising prices because they can.
Well, that's the point. They're raising prices because they can, and they're not being competed down. You know, market concentration has allowed giant corporations to hide behind claims of increased costs to fatten their profit margins. So the consumer pays more, both because the corporation faces higher costs and because, as you put it, because the corporation can increase prices. The reason I raise this is that higher prices have many causes, and we can't overlook the role that concentrated corporate power has played in creating the conditions for price gouging. Now, before my time expires, I want to ask you about...
So she essentially gets this fool to admit the obvious, or what I believe should be obvious. And Professor Richard Wolff, an economist, is absolutely astounding when talking about this issue of inflation, as he is about pretty much anything else that he has to say. I recommend you to check out his work. But, you know, I've never really, even before listening to somebody like him, understood the confusion around something like inflation. You know, especially in mainstream media and even with some politicians, obviously not Elizabeth Warren, but they make it seem like it's this mysterious event that occurs and we don't really know how or why, and we don't know what's driving it. We don't know how to stop it. It's just bad. It's just bad, and things cost more and we have to deal with it. Okay. Let's just go over what inflation is very quickly. Inflation is a general rise in prices, okay? Not every price goes up the same. Not every price, rises at the same rate. It's, in different sectors of the economy, things may rise at different rates. But generally speaking, prices go up. That's all inflation means. And I love it how the corporations, of course, but we'll leave them alone for just a second. But these politicians that have a job to do, they have to toe the line for the people that fund their campaigns, i.e. these corporations and everybody else that drive inflation. They have to come up with these scapegoats. It's COVID. It's the supply chain. It's this. It's the Federal Reserve is pumping so much money into the economy. They've been doing that for the past couple of decades, and we haven't seen an inflation. It's amazing, and they fool people with this jargon. Let's go over something very quickly. Who sets prices? The employers do. A very small minority of the population sets the price of the goods and services that you buy. Who doesn't set prices? I don't know, maybe the vast majority of people in this country, the employees, nowhere in your job duties, your list of duties, does it say, okay, you set the price of this, you set the price of that. No. That's not up for you to do. Okay, well, if the owners set the prices, well, who raises them? Well, the logical conclusion would be the people that set them, because they're the only people that have the power to raise the prices. Okay, well, then why do they raise the prices? Because they can. Because they can, to make profit. And he admitted it there. And I love how you saw how he squirmed and wiggled around when she was pressing him. I mean, what she was saying was absolutely correct. I mean, there's been articles that can't come about with that we've seen with statistics that I've actually covered of businesses jacking up prices and using excuses, but they only want to raise their profits. Look, there's no secret. 2020 was a rough year for many of these different corporations. The economy wasn't in a good shape, still isn't in a good shape, and they want to try to recoup to get back the money that they had previously lost. And so they're jacking up prices to make up. And I mean, a lot of it is just greed. It's profiteering is what it is. And that's what Elizabeth Warren was calling out in that video. And this guy, I love his responses. Well, on principle, you may be right. Or, demand is just, yeah, demand is so high that these corporations have to raise prices through the roof. Yeah, that's correct. That's definitely correct. I'm being sarcastic in case you can't tell. But this is what it is. But on the mainstream media, they ask these dumbass questions. Oh, is it government spending that's driving inflation? It makes absolutely no sense, as if it's, once again, this mysterious event that no one can really figure out what the problem is. Guys, in this economic system that we have called capitalism, we give a small minority of the people the power to do these types of things, i.e., set prices. And when it becomes convenient for them to raise said prices, as they're doing currently, they do so. Why? Because they've been put in the position to do so. Or rather, they haven't been put there. They fought their way there. And now they're doing what they're simply able to do because they're in said position. Okay, well, how do we stop that nonsense? Change the system. Make it to where it isn't the case where a small minority of the population is able to decide to dictate what the vast majority has to deal with. That's not democracy. That's not fair. How is it fair when, something like the meat industry is something that Joe Biden brought up the other day, how it's been monopolized. It's like 4 different companies basically run the entirety of the meat industry in this country. That's one example. I mean, another example is fuel, gas. I mean, what's like a handful of companies that are able to jack up the price of oil, and the rest of us just have to deal with it. I mean, this is what this system promotes. This is the type of stuff that it, throws on the rest of us, and we just have to deal with it. And these politicians and people that have a job to do because they're on the payroll of the different corporations and what have you, come out with these scapegoats. Oh, it's this, it's that. This is the reason. It's lies. And it's not that difficult to discern if you just give it a moment of thought. I mean, truly. It's not that hard. It really isn't. I mean, honestly, but kudos to Elizabeth Warren. I thought that this was absolutely amazing. Just grilling this guy, and he couldn't come up with an adequate response whatsoever. I mean, look at him. I mean, what's he going to say? What's he going to say? I just love how he admits, well, they're kind of doing it because they can. And then she says, well, yeah, that's the point. And they shouldn't do that. But obviously, we need to go a step further, because just reprimanding them and telling them that they shouldn't do that and that's wrong, that isn't enough. We need to take them out of the position to be able to do that. They shouldn't have the power to be able to do that. And the quicker we realize this, the quicker we can stop bullshit like this from happening.